Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Talia al Ghul. She's the daughter of Ra's al Ghul, the leader of the League of Assassins, and she's constantly being torn between her father and the Caped Crusader himself. Now, in Batman's Son of the Demon, the name should tip you off as to what happens. But by the end of the story, Talia ended up giving birth to a child, and Batman was the father. Meet Damian Wayne. He was perfect. I mean, genetically speaking, of course. He was born from an artificial womb, and he was supposed to join the League of Assassins and be a great warrior. That was the plan. You know, having a powerful skill set in martial arts before he was even a teenager, Talia al Ghul explained who he was and left him with his father, Batman. Now, she was hoping that this would cause problems for Bruce Wayne and that this would disrupt Batman's work. You know, getting the little one to spy on Batman and stir up some drama with Tim Drake in the meantime. He was actually quite eager to replace Tim Drake as Batman's wingman. So troubled Damian Wayne grabs another Robin costume, added some of that League of Assassins gear he was used to, and then he took out the villain Spook, in a rather dark way too. The guy's wild. At one point, he ended up sucker punching Tim Drake off of a T-Rex model. Sometimes those villain genes just get carried down no matter how the kid gets born. And before we continue on with this list of bad moms, guys, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up if you want. You should, because it really helps out our studio quite a bit. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for your continuous support. Now let's get back to this video. Number 9, Superwoman, Earth-3. She made her comic book debut not too long ago in Justice League Volume 2, Issue 23. Lois Lane of Earth-3, that is an Amazon native and a member of the crime syndicate. Now, she was in a relationship with her teammate Ultraman, but that relationship was pretty toxic. So she veered off and had an affair with another teammate, Owlman. And then she also had another affair, but this time with Alexander Luthor. So she had this handy little tool that helped her get all these side romances in the works. She had the lasso of submission, which enslaves others to her will. So it was only a matter of time before she got pregnant with one of these guys. Now, supposedly, the child was Ultraman's. But, she told Owlman that it was his. She was manipulating both men. Her plan was much deeper though. When the Injustice League had attacked, they freed the prisoner Mazaz, who Superman then revealed was the true father all along. So yeah, she manipulated the Syndicate into bringing him back as a prisoner, where she helped him go against Black Adam and Bizarro. And honestly, this whole love triangle, or love hexagon, is definitely Bizarro. That's the word I would use for it. Number 8, Catwoman. Selina Kyle first appeared in comics way back in 1940 in Batman issue 1. She's had a pretty on and off complicated relationship with Batman, so it was just a matter of time before the two got really close. In Huntress issue 1, the Huntress of course is introduced as Helena Bartolini, but there was another Huntress in the comics as well, and she was the daughter of Bruce and Selina. She was introduced to readers in Huntress volume 3, issue 1. Now this all happened on Earth-2 as well. See, Helena is a lawyer for Cranston, Grayson, and Wayne, but the daughter of Batman and Catwoman. So she's got a few tricks up her sleeve as well. When she was only 19 years old, her mother, who used to be Catwoman, passed away in a tragic mishap, no thanks to this henchman named Silky Cernak. He was the reason behind a photo that came up, and it showed Selina Kyle as Catwoman attacking a police officer. So of course Helena was pretty upset, and she wanted to get even. They're making her mom look bad. So she took a page out of her parents' book and became the Huntress. Now she went after Silky Smooth Cernak and then got him arrested, and her mother wasn't even as bad as she thought, because the photo, it was tampered with. It wasn't even a legit photo. But she ended up keeping the suit and attitude, and eventually wound up on the Justice Society of America. And also, recently this year, readers got their first look at Jim Lee's variant cover for Batman and Catwoman issue 4, where Helena Wayne stands front and center, and in this version, she looks really, really cool. If you haven't been reading that run, you're missing out. Number 7, Lady Shiva. She's been known as a villain and a hero since her first debut in Richard Dragon Kung Fu Fighter issue 5. Now, Lady Shiva and the assassin David Kane did have a child named Cassandra Kane, who was the 4th Batgirl. She also had another child as well in another comic, which I'll explain a little later on in this list. So she made her first debut in Batman issue 567, called The Mark of Cain. When Lady Shiva had her, she was born with the intention to serve as a bodyguard for Ra's al Ghul. Her father, of course, trained her as a child, so she wasn't taught to speak though, that's the thing. He would instead use actions to communicate with young Cassandra. That, and they cut her off from the outside world, only exposing her to the things that she needs only when necessary. So not the most fun childhood, that's for sure. So what ended up happening is that part of the brain that registers speech and language processing was instead being used to read other people's body language, like super well. So this made her a great fighter. She could predict the moves that somebody was gonna do before she did them. Number 6, Ursa. She was a Kryptonian military officer who was loyal to General Zod. But of course she was banished to the Phantom Zone with him, and then in there, they conceived a child. That child's name was Lor-Zod. They conceived him in the Phantom Zone until he arrived by pod to Earth. So this young boy was lifting TV sets and cars like it was nothing. Everybody was soon looking his direction. It was obvious that he wasn't from around here. So the Department of Metahumans Affairs decided to take the boy to a secret place in Washington to do tests and all that jazz. But they didn't tell Superman, which is not a great idea. He broke Lor-Zod out and then convinced Lois to adopt the young boy, naming him Christopher Kent. And yes, he is also immune to kryptonite. Now, of course, he has similar powers to Superman, but the most unique ability Christopher Kent has is that of telekinesis. Number 5, Cheshire. Made her first comic book debut in New Titans Annual Issue 2. She's an assassin and a mercenary who uses potions. She's often gone head-to-head with the Titans, and sometimes she gets a little closer than what we would imagine. Turns out she fell in love with one of those Titans. She fell in love with Roy Harper, aka Arsenal. See, originally Roy went undercover for the government in a mission to try and turn her over, but they fell in love during this mission. Classic. So he knew there was no way he could turn her in, so he just left. He just called it off. So Jade didn't know his true identity until years later, but after their romance took off, their daughter Lian was welcomed to the world with Roy raising her. See, sometimes it ends up okay, sometimes it's weird, sometimes it's okay. This next one though is pretty weird. Number 4, Orca. This next one takes place in the Injustice Elseworld series, where Killer Croc and Orca are actually married. Yeah, it's nice when it starts with the two of them being together already. Like, no one has to go to jail, no one's getting broken out, no one's conceiving children in the Phantom Zone. It's nice, it's fun. It's weird, but it's fine, at least in terms of villains. Now, in Injustice 2, issue 42, Orca walks in, simply announces that she's pregnant, and then a nice spit take is the first response. And then Killer Croc stands up and he's like, well, I should probably go. And then everyone's like, I have so many questions, but if you ask questions, Killer Croc will not answer them. He'll instead put your head through a wall. So keep those thoughts to yourself, my friend. That child would be quite the unit. I mean, Orca mixed with Killer Croc, I would never want to bump into this family in any parking lot ever. That sounds like a nightmare. They're cute though, they're happy. Number 3, Lady Shiva. Again, this time we're talking about Lady Shiva from the Dark Multiverse. See, your partner this time around was none other than back-breaking Bane. And they had a son named Torn, and this happened right after Bane had actually broke the Batman. Now, cut to 30 years down the road, John Paul Valley is the new Batman, and poor young Torn had to watch his father get broken by the Bat this time around. So he trained with his mother in the League of Assassins, and then when he got a little bit older, it was time. They freed Bruce Wayne from capture in Gotham City and helped restore him to the mantle of Batman so they can get revenge on John Paul Valley. And as far as villain mothers go, this isn't too bad. I mean, anything that involves breaking Batman out to get revenge, hey, I'm on board, sign me up. Number 2, Maxima. Making her first appearance in Action Comics issue 645, Maxima is the oldest child of the royal family of Almerac. She came to Earth in search for a suitable mate, and then when she laid eyes on Superman, she knew he was the one. Just because they were compatible doesn't mean it's gonna happen. So Superman rejected this offer, so she went ahead and teamed up with Brainiac for a bit more before ultimately turning against him and joining the reformed Justice League. Now down the road, she again offered herself up to Superman because, you know, she's a better person now and doing good deeds. But again, Superman said nay. He was married to Lois, so it's just not in the cards. Sorry, Maxima, it's not gonna happen. But in Adventures of Superman Annual 3, we see a front cover that makes readers turn their heads. Well, after an untimely passing, Lois Lane sadly wasn't really in the picture anymore. Clark sadly felt responsible for not saving her, you know, typical hero stuff, typical guilt. So he left Earth, he couldn't bear it. He felt he didn't belong there anymore, truly. And while Superman was being attacked in space, Maxima came to their rescue. And Superman, well, he decided to stick around, not having anywhere else to go. He figured, why not? Now this escalated, they had their ups and downs, but in the comic it implies that the two eventually had kids. So the lesson here, folks, is if you get rejected, just keep trying, because maybe your dream man will just come swooping by you in space out of the blue. You never know. And finally, number 1, Harley Quinn. Of course, we have to mention the time Harley had children. Now, this is from the DCAU, where we don't necessarily see her children directly, but we meet Dee Dee, her 2 granddaughters who were twins, and they're just a load of fun. They were referred to as Dee Dee because it's cute and it sounds cool, but their names were actually Delilah and Daydream. So she had raised these twins in hopes of keeping them away from the life of crime, but they inherited the same fascination that Harley once had with the Joker. So this was easier said than done. They both ended up joining his gang when they were just teenagers. Honestly, anything that has to do with twins is just so fun to watch. Even if they're evil, I'm like, yeah, You guys look like you're coordinated. You're wearing the same thing. It's great. Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Hela. Earth 1610 is home to the Ultimates. And in Ultimatum issue 2, we see this version of Hela make her debut. So at this point, in order to release Valkyrie from Valhalla, Hela forced Thor to fight her army of undead soldiers. So after that goes down, Thor's like, okay, cool. Is there anything else I can do before I head out? You know, should I change a couple kegs? Maybe should I dust? Anything to get Valkyrie out of here, let's go. And then she starts undressing. Hela starts undressing, and then she starts to explain to Thor that she needs a heir to the throne. So he's like, okay. So he follows through, he does it, but then afterwards, Hela tells him some more information. So in order to release someone from Valhalla, somebody has to take their place, a soul for a soul in a way. So that soul to take Thor's place in order for him to leave was Valkyrie. Oof. So this son that they had was none other than Modi Thorson, and his journey begins with New Ultimates issue 5. And before we go on to number 9, guys, if you could go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, it really does help us a lot at the studio / our home studio for the time being up here in Canada. But all those likes add up and do us wonders, so thank you so much for your support. Now let's get back to the list. Number 9, Mystique. She was mentioned in All New X-Men issue 27, but this Mystique was from Earth 13729, and most of her character is the same, only this time around, she had a child with Charles Xavier, and they named that child Charles Xavier 2, because, you know, that's how villains do it. So they felt as if they were unfit to raise a child, so they gave that child away. But later on, Mystique had another child, this time with a cooler name. The name was Raze. Now this child's father was Wolverine, so he's a bit more exciting, you know? And by exciting, I mean he grew up resenting his parents and eventually took out his mother and replaced her without anybody knowing. Cool. So Raze's shape-shifting powers is stronger than his mother's, and he clearly has some rage issues like his father. In X-Men, No More Humans, Raze had this ultimate plan. He was gonna basically try and remove the human population from Earth and instead fill that spot, rather, with mutants from other multiverses. So it would have been a multiverse mutant paradise. So evil, but he's got some good ideas, I think, maybe. Number 8, Carnage. Making his first appearance in the Amazing Spider-Man issue 360, Carnage is a symbiote that is the offspring of Venom, and its host is none other than Cletus Cassidy. Now, Cletus was sharing the same prison cell as Eddie Brock in the Amazing Spider-Man issue 344, so while Cletus was planning on stabbing Eddie Brock, the Venom symbiote comes to rescue Eddie, but after Brock is reunited with the Venom symbiote and it breaks out, a piece of that symbolic material attached itself to Cletus. It was left behind. So now Cletus became Carnage. And Carnage is terrifying, honestly. I'm actually really looking forward to the movie. I hope it's scary in some way, but like, he's a terrifying guy. So Carnage is this brutal offspring of Venom, and then Toxin is now a brutal offspring of Carnage. They're all having kids, that's right. And then in Venom vs. Carnage issue 2, symbiote number 1000 is born. So Toxin is actually said to be one of the strongest and most dangerous symbiote there is. So isn't that lovely? Number 7, Menace. Lily Hollister first entered Marvel Comics in Amazing Spider-Man 545. And she's the daughter of District Attorney William Hollister, and at the time, she was dating Harry Osborn. But then she stumbled across this secret door in Harry's closet, and then after poking around, she discovered some goblin tech. And then after knocking over some experimental chemicals, she absorbed them onto her skin, and then was now able to turn into this menace. Literally, her name is Menace. And things got even more wild when she got pregnant with Norman's kid, and that son was Stanley Osborn. Now, since his parents had both been exposed to the goblin formula, the boy's blood had literally had a price tag on it. So the criminal underworld wanted to get their hands on that sweet, sweet evil DNA. Dr. Octopus almost kidnapped Stanley, but luckily Peter knows how to hold a baby while he does parkour, which is amazing. This whole issue is just amazing. Number 6, Parents of the Runaways. This next one is a combo piece. Okay, so the Runaways are a group of 6 kids. They were the children of these parents who would meet up once a year for this charity thing. So they were kids, so it just sounded like some adult boring stuff, right? But then one day those kids went to take a peek as to what they were really doing, and they spied and found out that they were the Pride. No, not Simba's Pride, nothing like that. The Pride was a criminal group filled with villains, like time travelers, dark wizards, aliens, mutants, you name it. Just a whole plethora of fun. So they didn't even know it, but they were children of a villain group the whole time. So they ended up stealing their parents' super tech, and then of course being the offspring of these superpowered folk, they too had powers. So they combined their forces of their own and they set out to undo the damage that their evil parents had started. So that's a good case scenario. We like that. That's good stuff. Number 5, Genesis. She made her first debut in X of Swords Stasis issue 1. She's the wife of Apocalypse, and she served as a warlord by his side in Okara. Now the children were a bit different than most on this list. Their children became the first horsemen. So when Okara was being attacked by the Amenthi, Genesis ran the show. She led the mutants into battle, and they came out on top. They won. Then the elder god Annihilation offered a peace treaty. That's how you know she kicks ass, when the dark god of Amenth is like, truce? So when Genesis' sister betrayed her and her people and sided with the Amenth, Genesis moved to the Amenth and then made the sacrifice, being sealed away in Amenth with those first horsemen. I said Amenth a lot, but yeah, she ended up being sealed there with her children. It was pretty dark. Number 4, Elektra. So for this one, we go over to the MC2 universe, where Elektra married Wolverine, and then soon after, of course, came a child. Now that daughter was named Rena Logan, and if that name doesn't ring a bell, she was also referred to as Wildthing, for good reason. Yeah, let me explain. So Rena's powers are very similar to her father's, obviously. I mean, even just by looking at her, you could probably make a guess who she's an offspring of. But she also possesses the power of regenerative healing and super strength. So what makes her stand out is the psychic claws, the psychic size rather. Her minor psionic powers allow her to manifest her own claws, which is similar to Cyclock. She can inflict mental damage, but if she focused hard enough, she can have claws like her father and dish out physical damage too. Number 3, Vanessa Fisk. Vanessa made her first appearance in The Amazing Spider-Man issue 84. They met when she was only 15 years old, and not gonna lie, it's pretty dark. She was brought to him by his goon squad, and Wilson saw her natural sense of grace and depth, so they became partners, which sounds like a classic love story, but she was brought in for like awful reasons. She was gonna be used for like labor. It's just not great. She was 15, like come on dude. Now of course Kingpin is a top tier villain in both Spider-Man and Daredevil's lives, and Vanessa would mostly be on board with his evil deeds in the future. I mean, the odd time she'd be like, maybe don't do that specifically. But most of the time she was like, let's do it, Criminal Empire, all aboard. So once they had Richard, Kingpin got even more protective of her, right? This kid Richard was actually sent away by Wilson and Vanessa. He was sent to Switzerland to go to school. He studied hard, he stayed in shape, but he bragged about how rich his father was. He was one of those guys, you know? So when he turned on the news and saw that his dad was being exposed as this kingpin of crime, he was like, damn it, I gotta get out of here. I've talked way too much. He disappeared into the wilderness and he was never seen again until the next issue when he came back as a villain named the Schemer in Amazing Spider-Man issue 85. Number 2, Harness. She made her first comic book debut in New Mutants Annual 7. Her real name is Erica Benson, and she's the mother of the mutant Piecemeal who had merged with Proteus. Now her son wasn't named Piecemeal, of course. He didn't just pop out as an evil villain. He was named Gilbert, which is a great name. It sounds very friendly. He was just cursed to have to carry around part of the villain Proteus around with him in his soul. When AIM discovered this, they got Erica to take Gilbert all around the world to absorb more of these parts of Proteus, like dragging a magnet through sand, to one day have this villain reborn thanks to Gilbert. She was cruel to Gilbert on purpose. She wanted this reborn villain to be as evil as possible, so she tried to be as awful as she could. Abuse in every way, I mean, it was awful. Harness is not a great mother. Poor Gilbert. And number 1, Loki. Yeah, you heard me. Okay, this one's a little bit of a stretch, I'll admit, but it's too wild not to talk about, so I'm gonna talk about it. I'm not sure when I'm gonna bring this up again, so let's do it. Loki is the shape-shifting god of mischief. He takes on all sorts of fun appearances. Like in Thor Ragnarok, there's a fun little scene where Thor thought he was picking up a snake, and it was actually Loki. Good, clean comedy. So he does it often. But at one point in the comics, in order to prevent having to pay a debt, Loki turned himself into a horse, and then while he was a horse, he gave birth to an 8-legged animal that became a fan favorite of Odin's, a horse named Sleipnir. So yeah, of course I gotta finish with that one. Loki's giving birth to a horse. So I hope that image lives in your head rent-free as well as it does mine.
Number 10, Harley Quinn. She's gonna go down here because some feel she leans more towards the anti-hero side these days, just ignore the bodies. However, in a couple of alternate timelines, she has gotten pregnant by the Joker, and in both, she's given the baby up for its own good. In the Injustice verse, she would find her way back into her daughter's life without initially revealing who she was, just happy to be able to contribute, And then there was Old Lady Harley. Yes, DC did an Old Lady Harley after the resurgence in popularity of Old Man Logan post the film Logan, when people learned that it was similar and reminiscent in tone of that comic, though they oversold its similarities between the two, just a little bit. So in Old Lady Harley, her pregnancy was a big reveal. She had gotten pregnant by the Joker and had not been able to even look at the child or attach because of his father, and of all that had occurred in that relationship, and so left the baby at the hospital. This would set the baby on a path of revenge against her for abandonment. It was all very dark and sad. It got way less zany than advertised at the end there. Number 9. The Huntress. The first one from the Golden Age, so this is Paula Brooks, who was renamed as the Tigress via retcon later on. She was married to fellow supervillain the Sportsmaster, and in comic canon, that's where it ended. But enter Young Justice canon. Here, she would have largely the same backstory, but would also have it tweaked to be the mother of 2 children, the villains Cheshire and the hero Artemis. Her relationship with Sportsmaster had deteriorated after she had suffered an injury that left her paralyzed and made her not want to live such a dangerous life of crime anymore, especially now that she had children. This created a whole new dynamic for the characters in the Young Justice universe. It was a cool character addition, and Paula Brooks was ripe for it because she had a lot of gaps in her backstory, ripe to be filled with drama. Number 8. Hela. So in the comics, Hela got pregnant, and it was by Thor, but before you flip a table, let me explain. So in the Marvelverse, as in myth, Hela is Loki's child, so they're not siblings there. Calm down, MCU fans. So here's the story. Thor went down to her realm to try and get Valkyrie brought back to life. And when there, Hela told him that she wanted a son, and engineered a situation where he ended up being trapped there in Valhalla, or rather, her realm. Darkness. And he ended up missing his life so much that he agreed to her terms. Provide his sperm. And this is God time, so no gestation period here. She gets pregnant and gives birth that same day to a child, Modi Thorson, who was evil and aged quite rapidly, so Thor killed him. All in a day's work for the God of Thunder. Number 7. Inc. Heading over to the Batman Beyond verse in the DCAU, that being the DC animated universe for this villain. Inc is a mercenary, a woman who has undergone dramatic genetic mutation to be able to infiltrate pretty much anywhere. Her body is malleable and occupies a semi-gelatinous state and is dark navy blue to black, hence her name, Inc. Years before, she had a daughter who she had given up, but she ended up needing to call on her when she was injured, and her daughter had grown up to be a bit of a wastrel with a lot of credit problems. So she used the opportunity to trick her mother, and she got her the wrong chemicals, so she would end up dissolving. And hence her daughter would get access to all of her money, her entire fortune. But because of this, she would end up earning her mother's wrath, because Inc wasn't really gone. Cold. Ice cold. Number 6. Lady Shiva. Lady Shiva is just a great name to say. Sandra Busan debuted in Richard Dragon Kung Fu Fighter No. 5 in 1975. She would start off here but find herself growing more and more associated with the Batman mythos. So let me tell you a little bit about this. We need to build up. So Sandra had a sister, Carolyn, and together they moved to Detroit after coming from a village under the control of the League of Assassins. She and her sister would practice martial arts in Detroit and be seen by an assassin, David Kane, who noticed that Sandra was holding back against her sister. So Kane would murder her sister to unlock her full potential. Sandra would hunt him down, only to discover it was a League of Assassins trap and that he was a member. When fighting, she realized that Kane had been right. Her sister had been holding her back. So she decided on a trade. She would give Kane a child he could raise if he spared her life and let her develop her skills to their full potential. So they would become lovers, and she would bear him that child, a child named Cassandra Kane, the girl who would find herself taken under Batman's wing as Batgirl and later Black Bat. It's all interconnected, it's all coming together. Number 5. Orca. We're going to be talking about the Grace Ballin version of this character. So Orca was a kind student who was doing experiments on spinal cord tissue regeneration using Orca's spinal cord tissue. I think you can see where this is going. This would turn her into an orca, and she could turn back and forth. And so what's a girl to do? Go on a crime spree, of course. She goes after rich people and jerks, kind of. She's taken a bit of a Robin Hood approach, but still this puts her in conflict with Batman. He doesn't stand for that. But she didn't get pregnant in the main verse, but in the Injustice verse, where she was a member of the Suicide Squad alongside Killer Croc. It was meant to be. They're both aquatic themed, come on, it writes itself. They're dating and she's pregnant with his baby. True villain love. Give the people what they want. I don't even know what that is anymore. Pregnant lists. Number 4. Cheshire and Catman. Cheshire was blackmailed into joining the Secret Six, a team of villains hired for specific ops, missions that sometimes geared a bit more heroic depending upon who was hiring them. So kinda like the Suicide Squad. While on this team, she would take up with Catman, who got a new lease on life in this series. People are taking him seriously. And she would become pregnant, but unlike her other child who we will talk about later, she would keep this child, a son. She purposely got pregnant with this child as a way to escape the blackmail that was keeping her on the team. She was being blackmailed by Mockingbird. She would move to the Himalayan mountains with her son, Blake. However, her son would be kidnapped and Catman would go on a murderous rampage to save him. But he would discover that he had been given to a loving childless couple, and so he would decide that the child would actually be better off there than with him or the mother. So he would go back and tell her that their son was dead so that she wouldn't know to look for him. Depressing. Number 3, Mystique. Mystique is a mother several times over in comics to some core characters. She would have Graydon Creed with Sabretooth, and while in her Raven persona, she would marry Baron Christian Wagner and give birth to Nightcrawler. But not by Wagner, as he was infertile and also an unsatisfactory lover, so she would begin to have affairs, and one of them would be that she would seduce Azazel and get pregnant by him, hence Nightcrawler has such an extreme appearance. He would be believed to be a demon and she would have to flee, but abandon Nightcrawler in the process. Mystique is also the adopted mother of Rogue, whom she raised with the great love of her life, the mutant Destiny. Mystique lives her life, all of it, and children come as they do. She has a bit of a different relationship with them because she is so long lived. You would attach to people differently after a while. Number 2, Talia al Ghul. Talia is the daughter of Ra's al Ghul and the mother of Damian Wayne. The current, at the time of this recording, Robin, or at least the most recent. The tale of the conception is one of controversy. So the idea of Batman having a biological son first originated in an Elseworld story, and when they decided they wanted it to be main continuity, they got Grant Morrison to write it. But he misremembered this first original story, and thought that Talia had raped Bruce, slipping something into his drink, and then sperm jacking him basically. So that was what became canon, though it wasn't acknowledged as problematic for a while, and in some cases still isn't. This is why you have jokes made, for example, by Damian in the animated Hush film, he's the product of the rape, telling his father, the victim, to cover his drink. High comedy. So DC would try and retcon this to make it consensual, especially when they realized it had all been a mistake. But it just keeps coming back. It's that piece of canon that just won't die. It even survived retcons. It's powerful. Will fans ever let it die? I don't know. I will if they will. Retcon it properly. And number 1, Cheshire and Roy Harper. I'm sure a lot of you knew this was going to be number 1. It's iconic. The relationship between Cheshire and Speedy that results in Lian Harper, beloved child character, who would become a recurring supporting cast member of the Titans and the Teen Titans, and just a sweetheart to have around. Cheshire would give Lian to her father, believing that he could give her a better life than her, that she could grow to her full potential. She would grow up loved by superheroes, only to be killed in Cry for Justice as a shock kill to prove that things were really serious. And she's gone, because the idea has always been that superheroes with children are off-putting to the allegedly super young child audience. Demographics. Sure, Jan, I want to see those numbers.